Hey Copper Nerds, today we're going to take a look at the difference between EAC grading and commercial third-party grading. For example, good details? Nah, let's just give that one a net AG3. Let's get into it. So coin grading is more art than science, and EAC grading is probably even a bit more art than is the commercial third-party grading. Commercial graders will use just an overall grade, and then if it's got a problem, they just say it's got details. In EAC, we know that most all of our coins have problems. We don't need to be running around and everyone's got a details coin. So what we do is we start out with your sharpness grade, would be your first number, and then we deduct for various issues, be it environmental damage or cleaning or any surface problems, rim bumps, things of that nature, to arrive at a net grade that accurately represents the condition and somewhat the value of the coin. So the first one we looked at was this Sheldon 27. It's from the Jules River collection. It's a really nice, smooth, low-grade coin. So this one's going to be fairly close between the commercial and the EAC grade. I'm going to take a look at the notes that, I believe these are Sean Yancey's notes, and they are, that came with this particular coin. And it's in the 1794 registry. So a lot of times you don't have to do the work on grading when you're collecting these 1794s like I do. There's been many experts who have weighed in on EAC grades. But for this one in particular, points out that the NCS slab called it a good details coin. Sean's calling it an AG3, and I don't think it's getting really much for deducts. I think it's probably just a sharpness of a 3 and a net grade of a 3. So I'll show you some pictures of that one, and then we're going to move through a few others, and I'm also going to touch on this handy reference sheet, and we'll have more on that as soon as I show you pictures of this one. So let's take a look at this handy guide for equivalencies between commercial third-party grading and EAC grading. You know how I do my videos, I do them cold, so I didn't spend a lot of time with this list before pulling it out, but I got it from Jim Carr at the EAC course that he teaches at the ANA summer session, and it's kind of interesting to just sort of take a look at how, on average, your commercial and EAC grading compare. You're going to note that in the low end and on the high end, the spread's really not that far apart. But once we start getting into those mid grades, where we see that if a commercial grading company is calling it a very fine 25, EAC is probably going to call it a fine 12 or 15. And that means that we're a little stricter on the sharpness grade, and then we're going to net it down from there. When you get into your AUs, a lot of those are going to be EAC grades of a very fine, and then again, if it has issues, it's going to net down into that fine territory. So this chart is very useful. It's a handy reference. It's not something to go by necessarily, but it's just a good little tool, particularly when you're just wrapping your head around the differences between the two types of grading. But if you really want to get into grading, the Guide for Early American Copper Coins, which is an EAC publication, is a must-have book. It's very difficult to find, exceptionally difficult to find. But the good news is that if you are an EAC member, a digital version of the guide is available to you on the EAC website. So really the cost of admission, so to speak, is worth it, if anything, just to have access to this book. And we're going to flip through the book here in a little bit as well. Moving on to our next example, though, this Apple Cheeks came out of a PCGS slab where they had decided it was a very fine details. And what does details mean for your net value? You don't really know. That's why EAC grading is handy. So what we have here is a 24 Apple Cheeks that I cherry picked on eBay. The envelopes in front of us that were not noted in the listing are Chuck Heck and Al Boca's envelopes, which are two huge names in 1794s. And I note that Chuck had it noted as a VF25, Al had it noted as a VF20, And what we have it as generally is a VF25 net VF20 for its EAC grade, and that net is due to some cleaning and some little black spots, which are likely from someone talking over top of the coin. As it appears that I am right now, except for my camera is between my mouth and the surface of the coin, so it is protected. But let's take a quick look at this one in the photos, and then we will move on to some more. Next up we have this Sheldon 25 severed locks. PCGS calls it a very good details damage, and it is damaged. You'll note that we have some sort of significant rim damage here and there, a little bit in the field, quite a bit around the reverse. You'll see that better in the pictures coming up. But let's go ahead and jump into our grading guide on this one. This is a more fun example of a drastic net grade. So, they're calling it very good details. A very good for us in EAC is going to have about, that much detail remaining. And our example has stronger details than that. I believe we have fine details, more or less. Maybe something between very good and fine details. But I think we can give this coin the benefit of the doubt and say, you know what, it does have fine details. Which is only part of the story. Then we have to give it a net grade for the damage, the tiny bit of environmental damage on top of the mechanical damage that's on the rim and in the fields, which you'll get closer pictures of here shortly. But my grade for this coin, I'm not going to call it a very good. I'm going to call it a fine 12 sharpness, but a net good 4. So I think that you're getting a more accurate picture of what this coin is when you're saying, you know, the sharpness is an F12, but after considering all the damage and whatnot, we're going to net it down to a good 4. Instead of just calling it a very good details coin. Let's take a look at some close-ups on this one. Did you guys know that coins have 2 sides? Apparently I forgot. And actually these have 3 since we have the lettered edge. The reverse on this one lands again somewhere in between that very good and fine range. So this one at a 12 net 4, I think is safe. It could easily be a 10 net 4, but I do think it's a little stronger than an 8. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Here we have a Sheldon 66 split pull, which is a very rare variety. And you'll note that NGC calls it a straight graded good 4. It's also a coin that appears in the 1794 registry. And guess what they call it? A good 4 with no net. Apparently, I am the only one that sees the damage in the cap. Regardless, a very nice coin, and one of the rare circumstances where your commercial and your EAC grades line right up. Let's take a look at some photos. This Sheldon 59 is a pretty cool coin. It's got a neat and fairly rare reverse die break that you'll see in the photos. I won't be able to show it here very well, but it runs through the fraction. And you're also not going to see it real well here, but hopefully you'll kind of see in the photos. Surface has some fine abrasions and whatnot. Couple little issues on the rim, but nothing to write home about, or on the edge, I guess it is, not the rim. And this one, you'll note that Annex, they do, and they don't just say VG details. They're going to give you a sharpness grade. They're calling this one a VG10. That's pretty close. You know, it's somewhere between an 8 and a 12, I would say. As far as what I would give it as a net, let's call it a 6. We'll take a look at some photos. Here we have a lovely Sheldon 21 flat pole. PCGS calls it a very fine details cleaned. I don't know. I don't agree with that. Doesn't look real clean to me. And Sean Yancey didn't agree either. So we're looking at a PCGS graded VF details with a nice glossy dark chocolate brown surface. Only minimum signs of contact, I agree. Tiny nicks here and there. Ding in the fields. Details approach, very fine 20. It's very well evenly struck. But I agree with Sean in calling this one an EAC 15 plus, but net it down to a fine 12 plus. So we'll take a quick look at this one. Let's wrap up with this fun Sheldon 18A, which is a very rare R6 coin. It is condition census. Used to be tied for 13th, now it's tied for 14th. But what we have from PCGS is a poor to fair details. So like a 1 to 2 less the details. Yeah, we're not gonna go with that. See what Noise says in the condition census book. Right there in the middle, Noise calls it an average fair 2. So a 2, not a 1 to 2 less details. And this one also passed through the Chuck Heck collection. So let's take a look at his catalog, where it is called a fair 2 with glossy medium brown light chocolate surfaces, so on and so forth. Obviously there is a little environmental damage in that pitting, but not enough that it's going to drop us down from being a 2/2. So this is a rare instance where the EAC grade is higher than the third-party grade. So when it comes to grading, I mean, it really is more art than science. Two people can disagree as to a grade, particularly using the EAC system. Net deductions are not calculus. You know, there's a little bit of feel to your deducts. So practice is what makes perfect. Not that anyone gets perfect at grading, but practice is what makes proficiency, let's say that. And really, the best way to get proficient is to grade as many coins as you can and to get a copy of and study the Grading Guide for Early American Copper Coins. If you can find a hard copy of the book, grab it. It's well worth the buy. They're really hard to find. So if you can get one, definitely don't hesitate to snatch it up, even if you feel like you're overpaying. I mean, I think most of these I picked up for 80 to 100 bucks, just a guess, but I think I would gladly pay $200 just to have a hard copy of this book. It's definitely the most important copper-related book in my library. All right, my copper nerds, that's what I have got for us today. Keep in mind, I'm not an expert, I'm just a collector. Many of the grades that I showed you were determined and established by copper professionals, not myself, although a few of them were my best crack at grading on particularly the more common lower grade coins that we looked at there. Thanks again for checking in, as always. I'll look forward to talking to you in the comments. I will catch you on the next one. Cheers.